Castel, huh? Go, we're lucky Sam! No! They're going here! Ah! Go here!
What's Eating Gilbert Grape is one of my favorite movies. When it was released in theaters over 20 years ago, it wasn't a huge hit. With a budget of around $11 million, it only grossed about $10 million in theaters. Adding on the budget for marketing, it definitely lost money when it was initially released, despite also receiving press for Leonardo DiCaprio's well-deserved Oscar nomination for playing Arnie, Gilbert's mentally challenged brother. But over the years, thanks to VHS and DVD, it's grown in popularity. A lot of movies tend to do better after they're released in theaters, like The Princess Bride, Donnie Darko, or Office Space. Maybe some movies just need to age and ferment like a fine wine. Back in 1993, Gilbert Grape was produced as a major motion picture by a major studio. I mentioned it had a budget of $11 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $18.6 million today. If this movie were to be made in 2015, there's no way it would be made by a big studio for that amount of money unless it had a superhero in it. It would probably have to be independently produced with 1/16 of the budget, make the rounds at a few indie film festivals, then be released on iTunes and on demand a year later, lost in the noise of today's oversaturated market. It's a beautiful movie, and if you're not familiar with it, here's a quick rundown. Gilbert Grape, played by Johnny Depp, lives in the small town of Endora, Iowa, with his retarded brother, Arnie, his two sisters, and his morbidly obese mother. The film focuses on Gilbert as he takes care of his family while spending time with newcomer Juliette Lewis, whose trailer temporarily gets stuck in the town. Despite the simple setting, the film is anything but. There's a lot of bubbling under the surface of this family, as well as other smaller characters in the town, played respectively by Mary Steenburgen, John C. Reilly, and even Crispin Glover, who brings his usual odd self to the party. People who watch this movie might think that not a lot happens, but it's the exact opposite. Every character has some kind of internal struggle going on, except for Arnie, who seems to say everything that nobody else wants to say.
I could go at any time.
Shh. Arnie? No.
Anytime.
Gilbert's mother, Bonnie, is played by an actress named Darlene Cates, and I mainly want to talk about her. Prior to this film, she had no acting training. This was her first job, and she was phenomenal. I'll get to her performance in a minute, but here's some background on who Darlene is. She was born Rita Darlene Guthrie on December 13, 1947, in Borger, Texas. In 1963, at just the age of 14, she married a 24-year-old Marine named Robert Cates. She lied about her age prior to the wedding for fear of losing him. They're still married today and have 3 children. Over the years, Darlene began to comfort herself with food for a number of reasons. Being married that young was tough on her. Her husband was constantly being sent overseas, first to Japan in 1964, then to Vietnam in 1967, and that was at the height of the war. Meanwhile, Darlene was staying home, having children, and raising them as a teenager, watching the news every night, wondering if Robert would ever make it home. He eventually did, and after his last tour in 1975, he was home for good. They moved to Dallas and have lived there ever since. However, Darlene's weight continued to fluctuate. By 1987, she was well over 400 pounds and didn't leave the house for about 5 years. Then, in 1992, she was invited to talk about her story on the Sally Jessy Raphael show.
What's it like to live alone? And are you really in the house? Have you really been in the house?
I'm really in the house. I leave the house to go to the doctor's office to get blood work and flu shots and that sort of thing, but they come out to the car. For a while, I could get in using my cane. I could get to the back door and they would come and do it, but then I got to where I couldn't even do that. I've always had this fantasy, this goal of being able to go to the mall. Town East Mall is a big mall close to Dallas where I live, and sit there and not have anyone notice me.
At the same time, casting for What's Eating Gilbert Grape was still looking for someone to play the role of the mother, saw Darlene on the show, and auditioned her in her home in Texas.
So we needed to find a woman of at least 500 pounds. Looking at the casting books, there seemed to be very few choices or no choice at all. So we had to go look for an amateur. Someone had suggested for us to watch a show by Sally Jessy Raphael, and there was this discussion on obesity on that show. And here was Darlene, the Swedish lady, talking about her problem, and figured that girl could be something.
He immediately loved Darlene. And he said the mother in our movie needs to have the feel that this woman has. He just loved her immediately.
Darlene said that when she started reading, the director threw his hands in the air and said, "Finally, somebody that can act!" Weeks later, she was told that the role was hers. In the film, Darlene was a natural. She doesn't seem like she's acting at all. She seems like she's really part of this family. I love this scene where the whole family is sitting down for dinner discussing Arnie's birthday party. The whole conversation with characters talking over one another is so organic. Just this one scene tells you all you need to know about the Grape family.
How do you cook the bacon?
In the oven on a pan.
But the bacon's not going to be crisp if you bake it in the oven on a sheet.
Yes, it will.
And nobody wants greasy,
I want a hot dog.
You soak them out.
floppy
You put
bacon.
them on.
Mama, I want hot dog.
We're going to have hot dogs, honey. I promise we're going to have hot
What?
dogs.
I want hot dogs.
Think about
Have
party. I
hot
mean,
dogs.
every party that I've been to.
Ellen?
Is it,
Ellen?
what?
Could you not talk with your mouth full?
Excuse me?
You're making me sick. I'm gonna throw up.
Oh, okay, Dad.
Ellen,
Sure thing, Dad.
Will you cut it out?
Okay, Dad. Sure thing, Dad.
That's nice.
Stop it, you
don't
guys.
start.
Dad's dead, Ellen.
Gilbert.
Gilbert.
I can't believe you said that.
Dad's dead.
Arnie.
Dad's dead.
Arnie, shh. Arnie.
Dad's dead.
Okay.
Dad's
Stop
dead.
it now,
Dad's
Arnie.
dead. Dad's dead. Dad's dead. Dad's
Mom, Mom, Mom,
dead.
Arnie.
Stop.
Arnie, shut up. Crazy, Arnie. Arnie.
Jeez, I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. Then there are these moments where she's comforting Arnie. It's sweet and heartbreaking.
Don't disappear like that again on me, okay?
And disappear. I disappeared on Mom like that.
Please don't disappear.
Just let him go.
Then, of course, there's the scene where Arnie climbs the water tower again, gets arrested, and Bonnie leaves the house for the first time in 7 years to go get him.
Jerry! Jerry! Jerry, I've come for my son.
Sheriff? Sheriff, are you there? Bonnie, you'll need to fill out some papers.
No! No!
Police procedure
I want my
required.
boy, Jerry.
But Bonnie, you have to
My
follow.
son! Give me my son!
Yeah! What interests me is how Darlene felt about playing this role and how close to home it was. For example, there's a scene where Bonnie laments to Gilbert that she never wanted to be a burden to him.
Oh, Gilbert. I can't imagine how it's been for you kids. I know what a burden I am.
Don't say that.
I know it. And I know that you're ashamed of me.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I never meant to be like this.
Darlene has said that she's had pretty much the same conversation with her son. There's also this scene where she makes the long walk back to the car with a crowd of onlookers gawking at her.
There's that scene where you go down to the police station and people kind of look at you and pointing stuff. Is it like that in Florida?
I hated that. The first time I did that scene, it was very, very difficult, very emotional for me. It was art imitating real life. And it felt real, so real that I cried. After the scene was over, I had to sit down and take a break. I have to tell you that doing Mama in Gilbert Grape was not a stretch for me. My life in many ways was different from hers, but in many other ways, very similar.
Now there's one issue this brings up, and it's something I've argued about with friends before. Can you really call Darlene an actress if she's lived this story already? How hard can it be? Here's the thing. There are so many ways to achieve the performance you need for whatever project you're working on. Look at What's Eating Gilbert Grape. You have two perfect, polar opposite examples. First, there's Leonardo DiCaprio, who before his audition spent weeks with mentally challenged children, mimicking their actions, their movements, understanding how they think.
I thought I couldn't do it. I was reading it and I was like, there's no way I can pull this off. But I just tried to remain true to the character and not try to shy away from it, like deal with it head on and not like do things to cover it up. And I just tried to, make sure that it was real.
He put in the research and transformed himself into someone virtually unrecognizable. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but when I watched this movie for the first time and I didn't know who Leonardo DiCaprio was, my first thought was, wow, that retarded actor is amazing. Then you have Darlene, who in a way had already done the research. She had real-life experiences to draw from. Every scene she's in, every line of dialogue, it's coming from a real, genuine place. But just because you're playing a character similar to who you are, doesn't mean it's easy. You still have to be comfortable doing it in front of a film crew, in front of a camera, being completely honest and open about your feelings. And back then, before everyone was filming with digital, they were working with real film, so you had to worry as an actor not to waste film. The stuff is expensive. Even if you successfully get through an emotional scene, you're probably going to have to do it multiple times, and you're going to have to reset and try and get there again. It's still a process, and in my opinion, what Darlene did with her character was just as impressive as what DiCaprio did. Maybe even more so, because it's one thing to be open with feelings and emotions in a character that you've manufactured from the ground up, but it's totally another story to do the same thing with experiences that are close to what you actually went through, the emotional and physical pain that you dealt with every day. To take your own life and put it on display for a film, that takes some courage. Also, I love how supportive the rest of the cast was with Darlene. Every old interview I find with Depp or DiCaprio, they talk about how much they loved her.
Darlene is, for me, the shock of the film. She is the most incredible, one of the most incredible people I've ever known. First of all, to be so brave as to allow herself to unravel emotionally in front of our eyes, you know? And to put in such a performance that's without flaw, you know. I mean, it's 100% honest. I mean, it's right there.
Real people.
She's incredible. She's incredible. She should be applauded.
What a great story, Darlene Cates, who plays your mother. Tell us about her.
Darlene's an interesting person. I mean, the fact that she could come in the position that she's in life, where she's overweight, and I'm sure she gets a lot of people staring at her and a lot of unnecessary attention, to come into a movie for the first time and do the job that she's done and feel so comfortable and so loving towards everybody that was on set, including me and Johnny. We just loved her. We just hugged her constantly.
DiCaprio even wrote her a note saying, "I'm not really the best in expressing my words in writing, but you are the most special person I have ever met. I'll always remember you as the best acting mama I ever had. You triumphed in your role." Now, one thing that people might not know about Darlene, what did she do after Gilbert Grape? Well, what's interesting is that Darlene has a life outside of acting. She's still married, she has 3 kids, and she's not trying to survive and make a living with an acting career. She's said in multiple interviews that she would continue to act if the right roles came around, as long as whatever character she plays isn't made out to be a joke. That's pretty cool. She's in a position where she can pick and choose if she wants to. If I turn down every audition where my weight is used for a dumb joke or a one-off sight gag, I'd probably never work again. After Gilbert Grape, Darlene worked on an episode of Picket Fences in 1994. She played a housewife who accidentally murdered her husband by rolling over on him in bed. But interesting twist, you don't find that out until the end of the episode. Up until then, she confesses to murdering him on purpose to avoid the humiliation of what actually happened. Plus, she already hates herself so much, she'd rather paint herself as some kind of monster.
You're an innocent person. I'm a pathetic person. Maybe I'd rather be thought of as a murderer than... Can you imagine? To be sleeping on top of somebody and not even know it. I'm so fat I can't even feel.
There's some pretty good depth to a character like that, and she plays it well, tapping into that well of real-life experiences that she's had. After Picket Fences, she was in an episode of Touched by an Angel playing the producer of a sensationalist talk show. Darlene is the main guest star of the episode, and when you're the guest star of Touched by an Angel, that means you're the character that has some kind of problem, and the angels help you. Her character in this episode is constantly pushing people away, and you find out later that her and her sister basically covered up an incident that happened when they were younger, and they've both been living with the guilt for decades. Her sister hid the guilt on the inside, while she wore it on the outside. I was never a fan of this show. I think it could be pretty schlocky, but Darlene, again, did a fantastic job. There are some touching, honest moments in this episode. It's especially interesting when you consider that Darlene is religious in real life. Some years later, in 2001, she appeared in a film called Wolf Girl, or Blood Moon, as it says on IMDb. I'm not sure which one. Maybe it's both. This is an odd movie. It's about a teenage girl who's covered head to toe in hair and is part of a traveling freak show, but she just longs to be normal. Tim Curry plays the ringleader.
Don't forget, you're the main attraction.
You say that to all of us, Harley.
Yes, but when I say it to you, I mean it. And the other side. Thank you very much.
Darlene plays Athena the Fat Lady and is a mother figure of sorts to the main character.
Could you empty my bucket?
All you have to do is ask.
Could you help me up? I just hate to bother anybody.
Crazy. Everybody loves you.
I love you too.
After Wolf Girl, 13 years went by before Darlene was in a film. Most recently, she's appeared in a short film called Mother. I can't find a copy of it anywhere. I think it's still making the rounds at film festivals. There's a trailer available online. Today, Darlene still resides in Texas with her husband Robert. As of 2012, she's reportedly lost around 250 pounds, and she's still interested in acting work whenever the opportunity presents itself. To this day, whenever I catch Gilbert Grape on TV, I'll stop and watch it. It's hypnotizing because it's honest in every way. That's what an actor needs to bring to a project, honesty. And Darlene did that effortlessly. Darlene, from me to you, you're awesome. And whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I hope you know how special you are to a lot of people. And I think I speak for everyone when I say, love you, Mama.